So thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining us today on what is the first ARMA New Jersey event of the new year. Mark and I were saying this earlier, COVID brought a lot of changes to our world, but the one good development that came out of the pandemic was the move to the virtual environment. So I love meeting people in person, nothing better than having a drink with a good friend. But this enables us to bring together a larger and more geographically diverse audience. Today, we have people joining us from New England, Long Island, New York, Liberty Bell, Nova, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Birmingham, Richmond, Tidewater, upstate New York, and even as far away as Northeast Ohio, Dallas, and San Antonio. So welcome to all of you. I want to tell you a little bit about what's been going on here. Thanks to really strong region leadership in the New England region, the Northeast region rather, we've been regularly collaborating with our sister chapters. We work really closely together, and it allows us to coordinate our schedules, our topics, our speakers, and everything else that's necessary to ensure we can bring you innovative and interesting topics. I was just pointing out to Mark how much I enjoyed yesterday's session on sustainability and ESG. And for those of you who may be interested, New York, Long Island, which is the newly merged chapter, is on October 14th, hosting the intersection between privacy and IG. So be sure to give them a look. In New Jersey, we'll be holding our first in-person event since 2019 on October 13th at the beautiful Rutgers Club on the Piscataway campus. During 2020, the chapter turned 65, if you can believe it. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm ready to be doing some celebrating. So come out, try and join us. Rutgers Club's one of our favorite venues, and we're hoping to see as many of you as possible. There'll be good food, lots of drinks, and the best company. So before we get started, guys, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please mute yourself. If you're not speaking, keep your phone on mute. We are recording the session, as I said, and the less background noise, the better quality recording we'll have. If you have questions during the session, raise your hand or post them in the chat, and I'll queue them up for the speakers. Immediately following the session, there will be plenty of time for additional questions and informal networking. So take advantage of that time to make a few new connections or say hello to others. During the event today, several members of the ARMA New Jersey board will be here. They'll stay through the networking session at the end, and they're happy to answer questions you might have about the chapter or us. I'm just looking to see who joined us. Beth and I are both on the board, and as I'm just about to tell you, Phyllis is our newest member. Very new to the New Jersey chapter. Phyllis is not new to ARMA. She is a Boston chapter member and board president. Phyllis is an IG leader with over 30 years of experience leading consulting assignments and managing projects for clients in financial services, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, healthcare. It's quite a list. I'll let Phyllis talk a little bit more about herself in a minute. I want to welcome Phyllis to the New Jersey board as our Vice President of Professional Development. I think we can look forward to a really good programming year with her in that role. With Phyllis is Vana Pimala. How'd I do? Okay. I'm co-founder of Filers Keepers, which is a global records retention software platform. Vana is a data and tech lawyer and a two-time entrepreneur who loves building solutions to legal problems. So please join me in welcoming Phyllis and Vana, and I'm going to turn the conversation now over to Phyllis, and I will bring you a deck up.
Okay, thanks so much, Jackie, and thanks for all the kind words. A lot of what I was going to say, I won't be redundant. Jackie actually mentioned everything. And yes, I'm absolutely not new to ARMA. I guess I've actually been a member of ARMA, my goodness, I think off and on for about 40 years. I was a child in the crib when I started with ARMA, but I've been involved with many of the chapters. I've also been involved on an international level as an international ambassador on regulatory boards and so forth for ARMA. So now that I'm back in New Jersey and starting my own firm again, I actually have some time to devote to ARMA. ARMA has always been great to me, probably through the years. upwards of 90% of my business at times emanated from ARMA. And a lot of my friends to this day, like Mark Harder, who's president of the Boston chapter, we've been working together since our infancy too. So I'm really happy to be able to be part of the board here in New Jersey and become a force again for us. And I'm delighted by my position because I love my position as subject matter expert. And I want to bring a lot of new and interesting things, perhaps different than we've done before in the area. So towards that end, I am very happy to introduce my strategic partner on the records retention side, Ivana from Filers Keepers. Thought it would be interesting to talk about records retention from an international point of view, actually from an international firm. Vana, as you know, is already an attorney and really is spearheading a project with Filers Keepers with records retention information, research, and so forth, like I've never seen before. So I'm really happy to be partnering, and also for an expert actually who resides internationally talking about records retention today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the procedures over and proceedings over to Vana, and I'll be asking some questions as devil's advocate during the presentation, but as Jackie said, feel free to raise your hand to ask any questions as we're going. We're very glib about this, and again, we thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you in person at the October meeting and so forth and so on. So I guess with further ado, my friend, why don't you take over? And here's Vana from Filers Keepers.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. And wow, that's a great, well, 2 times introduction that I got here. So I'm really, really honored to be able to tell you our story, because I think it's a bit of a story. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Vana Pemelaar, co-founder and CEO of Filers Keepers, and I had a team of 41 persons right now. We're headquartered in the Netherlands, of all places, but we do like 60% of our business in the US and the rest all over the world. EU, of course, is a big market for us with the GDPR and so. So I'll be telling more about, you know, what we're doing and what we're seeing and why we're doing it. But I think that's part of the presentation. So maybe we can just start. If you guys have any questions at any moment, you know, let me know, and yeah, we'll be very happy to answer. Yeah, so yeah, we're coming out. Well, I hope that we're finally coming out of a pandemic. I don't know how. I'm pretty done with it. And the world is changing, and we're all working more virtually, and I think that is here to stay. At least a lot of folks I speak to on both sides of the Atlantic say, you know, I'm going to the office, but I also like my time working from home. So as a result, where everything is it gets digitalized. We're less working from paper, more in the cloud, online, and then immediately, you know, risk goes up. People are finding it difficult to find their records, to organize it. Retention, data governance becomes an issue. Data security becomes an issue, and that's where, you know, we have seen a big growth in the records retention, maybe even data retention market. And things are going to change, and they're changing with, you know, the GDPR coming, with the CPRA, but definitely don't underestimate the pandemic. It has shifted the way we work and how businesses work. So yeah, maybe we can go to the next slide, Jackie. The big question is, how long do you need to store your data? And I think there have been decades of speakers about this topic in ARMA. I'll tell my version of the story. What we do, what you will see on the next slide, is we read all the laws in the world. I'm not kidding. We are today on Pakistan, and we start from A to Z, or we work all the way back from 2021 to the very first law that we can find that it's still in effect. What's different than, you know, what You might ask with some of the other companies. We're a legal tech, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And I'm going, part of this presentation is going to be also like a story about, how did we come to this idea to start reading all the laws in the world. And maybe we can, so the journey hasn't been easy. So my co-founder and I both have a background as global data protection lawyers. So privacy, that's our background, so not records management. We didn't have any background there. I did the filing for the very first binding corporate rules. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the GDPR, but there are some data transfer mechanisms under the GDPR. One of it is the binding corporate rules, and it's a global framework for groups of companies to be able to share data internationally in adherence to the GDPR. At the time we developed that together with Philips, there was no GDPR, there was no basis in law, so we co-developed it and we lobbied for it to get it approved with the data protection authorities. And I was also a litigator for Facebook. I was on their litigation panel, did a lot of the litigations in the EU, started off in the Netherlands. They liked our vision, and at one point we were litigating everywhere together with the Irish law firms, until half of my team moved over to Facebook, and I didn't really like them that much anymore. And so one day a client came to us and said, hey, we're in 78 countries. Can you just let us know what the retention obligations are that are applicable to us? And the partner we were working for said, yes, of course, because that's what partners do, right? They want to make money. So off we went. We engaged 60 law firms in 78 countries, each employed about 5 to 10 specialists, and they all started to read the law. Now, the client was smart. They gave us a fixed fee budget for the research and per country. And you know what the law firms did? They took that budget and then they suffered because they were realizing that this was taking up way more resources than they had hoped for. The guys in New Zealand said to us, here are 4 retention obligations. They missed about 396 rules there. This was a highly diversified multinational in various industries. So they had to do their research much better than that. It seemed like each and every lawyer had his or her own interpretation of what a retention period was. So some of the work was really well done, most of it wasn't, and some was just plain nonsense. So we had to go back to those law firms and we said, why did you write this down? And then they went like, yeah, whoops, you got me. We hired a student intern or a temp worker. They left the job already. I'm sorry. The budget was finished. We could have done better for ICE principle, but yeah, what are we gonna do? We had to write off about 300,000 euros in cost going over budget, which is even more in dollars. And that was the moment that my co-founder and I looked at each other and said, well, the business model is wrong. This should not be a service. It should be a product. It should be scalable. It should not matter if you open up Slovenia, China, or the US. It should follow the same structure, same style of reporting, and it should be cheap. We literally wanted to be somewhere between 100 and 1,000 times cheaper than Iron Mountain, for instance. We started 3 years ago with absolutely nothing to show for. Like you can go to the next slide, I guess, Jackie. So no countries available, no retention periods, no customers, just 2 team members, me and my co-founder. And we just started to shouting in our network, hey guys, we're gonna do this, Startup Live. And then the first order came in, can I get Germany, can I get the UK? And that's how we started to build up our database. And what happened next, I will tell you in the coming slides. But first, I want to also address some other topics. So maybe we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to tell you that, on our journey through the kind of laws of the world, we come across these really interesting things. And I just thought we're all kind of like geeks amongst each other here. So why not share a few examples? Did you know that in Russia, you need to actually keep lists of the children of your employees, for instance, you need to keep that list up to date. The one below this, I'm talking now about the middle one, but the one below actually says documents about the provisions of places in preschool and school institutions. So it's like it goes. Russia is a fascinating country when it comes to retention rules. So maybe we can go to the next one. So the big question, of course, is to keep or delete, right? And I think that the one thing, you guys all know this, but the one thing that I find interesting is, data represents such tremendous value. And haven't you ever been in the situation where you told a company like, look, it's really time to get rid of this data, and the data analysts just go berserk and just want to kind of hold on to their data. We have seen, I'll tell you more about the litigations I've done in data retention here in the EU. I've seen people crying when the regulator came and has told them to delete the data on pain of a penalty. So that's a real, it can touch people. So there's definitely reasons for companies, of course, to remember and to delete. And I think one thing that is really changing the game is the GDPR, the CPRA now, with the no longer than necessary requirements. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. One thing that I find really interesting is the difference between the perception in the US and, for instance, the EU. In the EU, it's all about, we want to prove our position. Like, we want to keep records for as long as we can, so we can win the litigation. Whereas in the US, it's like, oh, please just get rid of this because it can all be discoverable. So those are kind of like the differences that we see in culture around the world. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So data itself has very little value, to be honest. It's actually what you do, and that's the next slide, with the data that creates the value. And that's also how we see it. Record keeping per se is nice, but it's a basic foundation for the use of that data, and it's a precondition basically. But it's about what you do with that, and that's the art and science of I think data governance, of privacy, of data security as well. So we keep it, and then we need to keep it safe, and we need to use it. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So it kind of sounds easy, right? We just read a few laws and we know what to do. Well, that's so incredibly difficult, because what if they say to you, you need to keep it 50 years in Poland or Romania, like this example here, payroll records, but then it should be deleted after 6 years in France. What are you gonna do? You will never be able to comply if you pick one, because either you will be overkeeping data, or you will be in violation of the GDPR or so. So we're seeing an increase in maximum retention periods in the world, although they are still in the minority. But we also see huge differences in retention culture, especially in the former communist countries versus the EU and the US jurisdictions. And those rules are sometimes make no sense. Yeah. So this is actually caution services hot in Braille. Sometimes we look at rules and we just don't understand at all what they mean, or why you would even do that. We literally sometimes see you should throw away payroll records only to for after 2 years, only to realize that the bookkeeping term is minimum 7 years in a country or so. So that makes absolutely no sense. But we have to deal with that, and that's the complexity actually. We can go to the next slide, I guess. So how did we go? So 2 months in, we had 5 countries research, we had 550 retention periods, and we had our first customers. So yay, we were really happy. We found it very easy to sell. We're like, hey, retention, everybody kind of hopped on immediately. And those 2 first customers were big multinationals. So we're like, whoa, this is really cool. And you can also see that, we did our research, but we really went for the kind of like the hundreds, most important retention periods in the country, like anyone is doing basically. So that was after 2 months. Can go. So we kind of started thinking like, okay, if companies need to, if they need to know what's applicable to them, that's the start, actually. You should know. And what do you need to know? Well, you need to know who should store. And you need to know what you should store. You should know if it's a minimum or maximum term. We also love to look at statutory limitations, by the way, because we think it's not a retention obligation, but it's a very good inspiration, maybe. It depends on the perspective. And of course, you need to know how long to keep data, and you need to know a link to the legal. You need to have a link to the legal source, and that's the kind of vision that we had. So we started to focus on the data, just the rules. That was the beginning of our journey. Plain language, keep it simple. We don't like fake terminology, like current plus 10 years. I don't know what that means. So we're really like, we wanted to pinpoint a date, and that makes it also easy for IT departments to translate that into a very specific IT event. So that's how we started. That was the vision, basically. Can we go to the next slide? So yeah, something we found in Turkey. There's an obligation there to keep. If you anonymize or delete records or data, you actually need to keep the proof of that for 3 years. So that's like a interesting perspective. You think you just get rid of it, but you actually need to keep proof of that. So it's also a case for, I don't know if you guys know companies like Blanco who do certified deletion. I think this is a very good case for them as well, because you actually need to keep their reports for 3 years in Turkey. We have seen, I think, one more country in the world that has a similar requirement, but that's it. You could argue, by the way, that you always have that requirement, if there is like a privacy law and a regulator that can conduct an investigation into your processes. So 4 months in, and we have 15 countries and 2,000 retention periods and 5 customers. And we were doing this besides our job. We were just still in, litigating and drafting contracts and everything. So we thought, oh man, those customers need more countries. So we hired our first employee after 4 months. Mind you, our entire company is bootstrapped. We don't have any financial backing. We just use our revenues to grow. So that's how we started. Now, yeah, please go ahead, Jackie. So for us, our basis of thinking is the GDPR, which is maybe different. Like you guys are often, I think you will start with the records retention and the information governance. But for us, it was the GDPR that started all of this. And it's very interesting to see what kind of the similarities and differences are. I think if you look at the GDPR and the CPRA, definitely are fueling the hype around retention. Privacy justifies the storage of records, but also the removal of data. If you look at the definition of processing of personal data, deletion and anonymization also falls under that. So that also means that, I always believe that the GDPR is about fair treatment of people. And fair treatment of people doesn't always mean that you have to delete their data. It can also mean that you have their data and they can access it. Think about, you going to your municipality or county and saying, well, look, I have a permit to build this house. And they look into their systems and go, well, I don't see it. I don't see it, I don't see any record of a permit that we have issued to you. So definitely, it's important to have data. but you also need a good reason to remove data. It inspires greater data governance, records of processing. You probably have heard all your privacy colleagues talk about that as well, and greater accountability around data governance. So that's definitely a big boost for records retention. And I like records retention because it relates to so much more than only personal data. And it doesn't only tell you when to delete, but also when to keep. So I like that about retention. And I think it's a very good defense. You guys probably have the best defense against the GDPR, against privacy cases, because you can actually demonstrate with laws and facts and business needs that certain data actually needs to be kept. So the privacy professionals in your organization couldn't wish for a better colleague and a better friend than you guys. That's why I also feel that privacy professionals should listen to you. 1,000 reasons to keep data, and you should also know when those should be gone, and you can actually help them talk to the data protection authorities. And why you should listen to a privacy professional? Well, every minimum term is effectively a maximum term in a country with a privacy law. I'm happy to explore that further with you. It will happen in the next few slides, but that's my kind of statement.
Actually, I was just going to ask Yvonne if you could expand on that, because I'm not sure.
Yeah. Can we just see if I'm not sure how many slides down that is, but I can definitely. Oh no, it is the next slide. So let's go there. Yeah. So the GDPR says in Article 5, thou shalt not keep data longer than necessary for the purposes for which you are processing or for which you have collected the data. Yeah. So that no longer than necessary is an extremely important part. Unfortunately, regulators are not clear about what that exactly means, right? They never go like, and that's for this kind of data, 3 years or 5 years, The only topics that they dare to say something about is CCTV camera images and a bit of recruitment, and only once in a while they will say something about customer data. But the no longer than necessary is something that we do consistently see being interpreted as follows. The European Data Protection Board, for instance, said, if you look at something like a statutory limitation, that equals a maximum retention period. Yeah. So if the statutory limitation has lapsed, you have no reason to keep the data beyond that moment. So that's like where they're turning like a statutory limitation into a maximum retention period. Actually, you can keep it shorter, but they don't like you to keep it longer. Also, a minimum retention period. If you have fulfilled the need, the legal requirements, let's say you're keeping payroll records, and you're looking at the bookkeeping term, and it says 10 years in Germany. Once those 10 years have lapsed, that you're no longer safe. You then need to really start asking yourself, why am I still keeping those records beyond the 10-year minimum period? And you need to be able to justify that. And that justification it rests on the principle of necessity, no longer than necessary. And necessity means under EU law, subsidiarity. Yeah, so it cannot be the purpose cannot be achieved in any other way. And the other one part of necessity is proportionality. Yeah, it should be proportionate to keep all the payroll records for beyond, and you need to define that purpose. And that is actually quite difficult. And you are definitely one down when you're in an argument with the Data Protection Authority, because they will go like, no, the tax authority doesn't want you to keep this, doesn't need you to keep this longer. Why are you keeping this? Why aren't you redacting it? Why aren't you anonymizing it? Why aren't you destroying it? And then you need to give a good reason to do that. And analytics, for instance, is not a good reason.
Yeah. So Vanya, I have another question then for you.
Yeah.
Does the authority, the GDPR authorities, the IC or whoever it is in what country, recognize the laws of other countries when it comes to necessity? So, for example, I'm a U.S. multinational with a presence in Germany.
Yep.
And Germany's rules are incredibly tight. Do they recognize U.S. law as a necessary reason?
Unfortunately not. And I have had, I've sat in rooms with debating heavily. You know, we have this US e-discovery. We now need to produce all of these records. They are in Germany. We need to now move that, you know, it contains personal data, and the German Works Council or the German authority just goes, no. And then, you know, the company is torn, to say the least, because they really do not want to piss off any US judge for sure, or any US regulator. But they also don't want to offend the German authorities. So what will happen then very often is they will redact it as much as they can. You know, they will minimize the data set as much as they can to lower the risk. But that's where, you know, the EU, yeah, everyone claims sovereignty, right? And every government claims extraterritoriality. You know, with the CCPA now, and also the GDPR. You know, it can come into effect if you kind of look at the market already. So yeah, that's a definite issue. But I think when it comes to looking at all the laws in the world and building a case, there's almost no way around it, because, you know, even if you were to set a golden standard, which is something we do a lot, we have algorithms that calculate, you know, on the basis of all the rules in the world, what would be the most optimal retention period. You will end up keeping records for 10 years, for instance, even in a country where the minimum requirement is 7 years, and we'll keep it 3 years longer. And then we kind of have to build a case around that. So yes, definitely, we do it. I don't think there's any way around it, but it is something, you know, the most optimal form of compliance is local compliance. That's for sure. Yeah. Shall we go to the next slide again? So data minimization is something you will hear a lot. You know, you need to kind of minimize your data, and deletion needs to be irreversible. Yeah, so if you destroy something, you should not be able to get it back. And, you know, archiving for scientific, historical research purpose or other statistical purposes. Yeah, so it's even that part, the part of the art of archiving, is actually subjected to rules under the GDPR. So I think that's also important, where the kind of pivot point is necessity. And then you need to be able to explain that something is necessary. Now, what does that do with current plus 10 years? I always want to really, you know, because I see it so much, you know, in things that our customers come with, like, this is our old schedule and it says current plus 10 years. I don't know if that would work, guys. I'm really interested to hear your opinion, but I don't know if that works under the GDPR, because the GDPR says no longer than necessary. So that kind of means that when something is no longer current, that if there is personal data there, and I'm not saying that every record has personal data, but if it's there, you know, why can we then still justify the plus 10 years, right? So shouldn't we look at a different trigger? Shouldn't we look at a different kind of justification than what the trigger should be? It could still be a long period, but yeah, that's the question I have. Yeah. This is an EU perspective, guys. So if you completely disagree, let me know. I don't know if there's a thumbs down button in Zoom, but anyhow. So how does a GDPR audit look like? Yeah, I do want to stress this, because I have been in this situation. So let me give you one example. We were in a litigation against the Dutch Data Protection Authority for a digital television service provider. And they came in, and they went like, can we see the application? So then, of course, the developers were smart and actually opened up the application, and they went like, no, not the actual application. We want to see the database. Give me the database. So we were actually line by line on database level going through the data, and then it was really literally like, why are you keeping this? Who has access to it? How long do you store this? Why do you keep it this long? And any company on that level will become nervous for sure. They asked, how long do you keep this? And then the company said, these were viewer data. Yeah, we're keeping this 6 months. Then they went like, 6 months? Why? Yeah, sometimes we get questions, really. They're like, okay, prove it. And then those guys became so nervous, and just, we did not hear back from them 2-3 weeks, and then deadline was almost there, and then we finally got word, and they were like, yeah, we got something, and I was like, great. And what is it? 4 months. We got a question after 4 months. And then we presented that evidence to the Dutch DPA, and then they went like, great, you have now proven 4 months, and that will be your new retention period. So be ready, if you decide to make your own kind of business decision to say, I'm going to keep this 10 years, no matter what the law says, I'm going to keep this 10 years. Be ready to defend that position, and be ready to prove that position with statistics, with examples, whatever it is. Yeah. So I think that's what I really want to bring is, you need to build a case, basically, to be ready. Let's go to the next one. So, retention policy is a very good defense, actually, because you actually point to laws, and this is how you can get data protection authorities out of their comfort zone, right? So they don't know about clinical trial regulations. They don't know about defense regulations or anything. Yeah. So I think it's good to kind of get them out of their comfort zone, drag them outside of the GDPR, and say, hey, there's this law that we need to comply with, this whistleblowing law or whatever it is. And then they will be like, oh, right, okay, and then they will shut up really quick. So I think this is a good position. Yeah, let's go. I will speed up a bit. Oh, sorry, can we? I think you went backwards, Jackie. Sorry. Yep, one more. Yeah. So risks are real. Yeah. So the bottom one is a 1.75 million euro, so which is I think about 2 million euro fine of a French company, La Mondiale. That was 2 weeks ago for keeping records too long. Yeah. They kept it longer than 3 years, where the CNIL really did not want that. And in the UK, you can go to jail, or you can even be banned from being and performing the position of a director of a company if you don't keep the records well. So it's both, underkeeping and overkeeping gets sanctioned also in the EU. I'm sorry, post-Brexit, I should say, Europe. 8 months in, we have 30 countries, 7,000 retention periods, 20 customers, and 5 team members. And I think if you hit the button, then yeah, we got our cool vendor badge from Gartner. So they already saw it in us at that moment. That was really cool. So I just wanted to share that with you. And yeah, maybe go to the next slide. So at one point we had those retention periods, and then our customers started to complain, and they said, well, what do we do with this? These rules are all conflicting, and and it's so difficult to comply with. So what do we do with this? So that's when we realized that companies basically have 3 problems. First of all, they don't know all the laws in the world, and definitely are they not up to date with the latest changes there. And the second one is, well, if you know all the laws, what do you choose? Because those laws are conflicting and there's so many. And then, where do you really start your implementation with all the challenges and dilemmas that you have there: hard copy, digital, global, local, structured, unstructured, you name it. And that's where we decided to do a few more things. So we started to build more consultancy, but also more algorithms around, not knowing what to choose. So we actually help in an automated way companies choose their optimal retention periods and to build really well-informed schedules on the basis of basically, a lot of laws that we keep track of, also in an automated way. We also started to look into the, how do companies actually implement retention? I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so companies are forced to make choices, and that's also because sometimes a granular approach to retention is not possible because just your system doesn't allow, to go very granular. I must say systems are changing and technology is changing. So with SAP, you can go very granular. You can even go up to the legal entity level and you can set the retention period. So if you have like SAP SuccessFactors or something as your HR system, you are definitely able to implement retention on a local level. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. It really, technology is coming, data discovery, data deletion, data governance, wonderful solutions. But even if you kind of build a golden Maserati of a retention solution, it all falls and stands with, the confidence that your business has in the solution. And if they don't believe in it, they're not going to implement anything. Let's move down because I'm conscious of time. A few slides. Let's just go to more. Yeah, this one. So one back, please. So I think what is really important is that you have like really informed retention schedules. Also because of the risks that I just pointed out. So it all starts with knowing the laws, in all the countries. So you can't see the full schedule here, but this actually has 50 countries with all their rules, next to each other, just pertaining to one class of data. And that's what we see very little. We often see just a US-oriented golden standard, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it is. And then, to be honest, for bookkeeping, the golden standard in the world, and I'm happy to reveal that here, however you look at it, it's 10 years. That's it. That's how long you should be keeping your records if you want to be compliant with most countries in the world. It's not 7, it's not 6, it's 10. And that's what analytics does for you. So yeah, we've actually read all those laws and we have seen all the countries, and then maybe in China you need to do 30 years or Chile permanent, but that's kind of it. So what we do now is we kind of tell people on the level of the law, and then we have the algorithms that can tell you what's the most optimal.
My apologies to everybody. My mouse is just doing weird stuff.
No worries, no worries. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, so our first that one. Our first anniversary, we had 48 countries, 12,000 retention periods, 75 customers, and 18 members. Just organic growth. And if you click on it, you will see, we already had like AT&T, DHL as our clients, for instance, and Volvo. So that was the first anniversary. That's 2 years ago. And after that, what we started to do was we started to build an ecology. We can go to the next slide. Of an ecosystem, basically, of partners to help us solve retention. Because knowing the law, knowing what to choose, we're not there yet. We need data discovery. We need data deletion. We need data governance companies to actually hop on board with our content. So what we did was we can go, I think, to the next slide. We built an API that allows us to integrate with virtually any kind of company, any kind of system. So our APIs are used by partners. Think of companies like Xtero, Conturo. Think of companies like Big ID, like MinerEye, Blanco. We're trying to integrate with as many systems as possible to help solve this problem. And I think the problems are big, especially if you look at the next slide. I think.
Anna, before we go on, and I'm not sure you can answer this question, but we do have one in the chat about US requirements.
Yep.
Is there any, are you aware of any requirements in the US physical over electronic?
Physical over electronic, definitely. There are definitely physical retention requirements. But one thing I can say for sure, there are no new laws coming out with physical storage requirements. And yes, they are there in the US, they are there in the EU. However, it's not that important anymore. And to be honest, when I don't know, the FDA or the SEC comes and does an audit, they much rather want to walk away with a hard drive full of data than boxes. So also you see definitely a need from the regulators, from the lawmakers to become more data oriented. And I think that's also one of the changes we see because of the pandemic. And I think that we are seeing a lot of laws that changes that don't not necessarily say you are not allowed to keep things hard copy, but that actually adds on top of that the possibility to also store it digitally. And we're building now a database of those rules as well. So we actually look at, is there a hard copy storage requirement? And is there like a data localization requirement or so? So that's definitely something that we look at.
Right, and part two of Chris's question, which is one that I don't think there is an answer to, but I will ask it. Is there a commonly accepted time frame for electronic communications? So whether that's chat or
email or chat or so we're just creating one. Why not? That's definitely, yesterday I was sitting with booking.com and they really care about how long they're keeping email. And I think the one thing that we all should tell our team members and our colleagues is, email is not a repository of data. It's not. So even if we're just implementing this phony retention period of say 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is, you always need to keep certain records because it's a contract that was emailed to you or whatever. So you need to put in place proper filing systems and document management systems, and maybe even you need to do discovery on those emails if you really don't trust your colleagues to do that well, right? Has some privacy implications, but not from a US perspective, but from an EU perspective, it will have.
I was just going to say, in the US, I can look whatever I want.
You can look whatever you want. Definitely. And please don't forget, there are rules in the world that say that you need to keep business records X number of years. And that is, of course, comes from a time when we just had a cupboard and a few papers in there, right? But the rules are still there. We have gone digital, data has grown according to Moore's law, but the rule is still there. So, you could argue that maybe you need to keep certain records, 5 years after final dissolution in Peru or so. So that's still something that I would take very seriously.
Well, that's a good segue to my next question. Max asked, how does your application deal with whichever requirements? So for example, records must be kept for 20 years or until the end of life of the plant.
Yeah. Or you mean the either or situation? Yeah. Okay, so at this moment, I'll tell you very much where we are at this moment with our tool. Yeah. At this moment, we are building a dashboard, and I'll also show that. At this moment, we build everything in Excel spreadsheets. So we have algorithms, they populate Excel spreadsheets, and that's what we're now building into the dashboards. And I have a team of about 5 persons that train our algorithms every single day. And we call it assisted driving, not an autonomous car, right? We don't trust our algorithms yet to that point. I think the either or question is a very difficult one for algorithms to really capture. And I must say, I don't even know if I understand what it means from a human perspective, to be very honest, if I start thinking really deeply about these kind of things, because it's a choice, right? It's one or the other. That means that ultimately we do need the choice from the company. And that's also how we are now, how the developers are building our system is it's a highly customizable and sometimes even editable a tool that allows companies to choose between alternatives. So to answer your question, Max, those would be alternatives to each other. So you would get our top pick, but then you would be able to click on it and say, what else do you have in store? I thought this was either or, and then you would see the or in the top 5 retention periods for a certain record. So that's how we decided to kind of do that, to score all the retention periods and to pick our favorites. And of course, hopefully we can crowdsource that and we can, build in feedback mechanisms in the system. All right. Yeah, so the challenges are big. Let's just unstructured data email. We've just talked about this actually, but if you really want to be compliant, you need to look into the email. You need to deploy data discovery, because that determines, is this a recruitment email or is this a health and safety kind of email? And that really depends. It differs really much between the retention periods, between recruitment versus health and safety. Yeah, so that's it. GDPR deletion is irreversible and auditable. Anonymization, same thing, irreversible and auditable. So we actually think like, well, synthetic data could also be an option. So there are some really great new advances in synthetic data where you actually look at the statistical strength of data, and then you don't use the original data anymore. You just use that, the statistical strengths to build a completely new data set that does exactly the same thing and has the same outcomes, no matter what kind of algorithm you run. So that would give data a second life, and you would kind of minimize the GDPR risk, because it's fake data. The persons that are mentioned there do not exist. So that's really cool. So we can do a whole new session about that actually. But those are the kind of technologies that we see coming out now, and that are so very exciting. Let's just skip the next slide because it's pretty much the same thing. After 3 years, we now have 100 countries and states available, everything in the US, everything in the EU, almost all countries. We have 150,000 retention periods, but still counting. We're adding about 2,000 to 3,000 a week. Now we have 450 multinational clients, including FedEx, Coca-Cola, Merck, TikTok, you name it. And we have 41 team members and 50 partners. So we're happy to talk to everyone. We want to solve this together. And even if you're like a consultant in the space, then come reach out, and we're able to share all our data with you. Yes, that's how we roll. And then for us, next up is launching a dashboard that builds schedules. Look here, in a semi-automated way. Yeah, you'll be in charge. Built on the laws of the world, and using intelligence to find those laws. And we really hope that we can then use that as a management platform to also start integrating with Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, whatever it is, to to be the console for retention. Yeah. So that's it. Any questions? It's a little story I still wanted to tell, but anyhow.
Okay. All right, so there was one more question, is how does your system deal with event triggers?
Sorry, with?
Event triggers. So
Event triggers. So you mean like from the date the contract terminates, or is that what?
well, my favorite is, you know, when you have minors records in, let's say, an automobile accident.
Yeah.
And you need to keep those records for X number of years after they become an adult.
Yeah. Well, that's not, yeah, that from an IT perspective, you would need to know the birth date before you can actually answer that, right? So, you know, what we try to do is we try to be really specific with the triggers, yeah, from a legal perspective. That's the first thing we need to do when we look at the law. If the law does not give a trigger, we will give one, and the safest one we can think of, yeah. But you do need to know the legal trigger, and then you need to translate that into an IT trigger. And this is what fascinates me. You know, a lot of times what I hear is that lawyers are involved in building the schedule, but they're not really involved in the implementation. And I think, you know, you need lawyers in the implementation phase, because they will be able to tell you, like, you know, okay, IT system says no, we need to now find something else, you know, and are we still operating in, you know, in the spirit of the law? Are we still on the right track? And I think that's very important. So I am not saying that filers keepers is the cure to all problems in records retention. This is something we need to do together. We need consultancy, we need data discovery, we need so many different specialisms actually to, and we need IT to fix this.
Great. Lana, thank you very much. I want to thank you. I want to thank Phyllis. Everyone should stick around. We're not done. There'll be plenty of opportunity to keep asking questions or just chat with your colleagues. You know, until then, on behalf of the ARMA New Jersey board, I would like to invite you to become a member of ARMA. If you're not already, visit the ARMA website and join up. If you are, and you want to connect with colleagues outside of your local area, look into joining another chapter. Many of us on here belong to more than one chapter, and it's a great way to build your professional and your social network. And if you give it some thought, who doesn't want to hang out with the cool kids, you know? So come hang out with us anytime you want. I'm going to turn off the share at this point and just open it up. We are now in what we call our informal networking section. So please feel free to turn on your cameras, turn on your microphones, and join the conversation.
Hey, Jackie, this is Seth.
Hi,
Just
Seth.
wanted to mention, hello,
Mhm.
great presentation. I just wanted to mention to all the participants that we recorded this, and we can send out an email with the link to the recording. We can also share that with the folks who had registered and couldn't make it. So we'll have that out in the next day or two.
Bye, Mark. Thanks for sticking around. Hi, Max. Good to see your face, Chris. Who else is still out here? Ken, I haven't seen you since we did the region meeting in New Jersey. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you. Had to find my
Good.
microphone there.
Good. And is that Eric Richter, formerly New Jersey Eric Richter? You're on mute if you're trying to talk to us. So that would be interesting. Ignatius, good to see you. Haven't seen you since you were at Inform with us.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good. We're back this year, so we
Oh, is it going to be in person or no?
In person, that's our plan.
Oh, that's great.
If there is any way to pull this off, we're going to do it in person.
When is that? When will it be?
On June 15th, is it, Seth?
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe so, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
June
till
16th, back at Princeton.
You have till
Uh-huh.
June, so that hopefully,
yeah.
we're hopefully that shouldn't be an issue.
I certainly hope not. I've had enough. I really
Yeah.
have. So I don't know about the rest of you.
We'll be up to our third booster shot by that time.
Got mine. Got mine Tuesday night.
Oh,
I
wow.
have. And I got mine with the flu shot at the same time. So I got up yesterday morning, and all of a sudden I had what looked like this great big muscle on my arm because I was so swollen from the 2 shots. But I don't care. Shoot me up as long as it keeps me safe.
Good for you.
So how are things in the other sections? Tell us, guys, what's going on in your chapters? Anything good? Maria, you still with us? It looks like you're kind of fading in and out. Hey, Alana, you want to talk to us about anything in Northeast?
No, I do have a question for Vani. Is that how you say your name?
Perfect. It's perfect. I respond to any use of my name. When I was young, some kid would be shouting "Mama" or something. I would come running. Yeah. So
I guess my question is something that kind of grappling with now. When does a global retention schedule kind of not become global, in your opinion? Vis-a-vis, if you have global retention schedule, and then you have, under particularly the problematic type records like HR, like payroll, you have so many country exceptions, and it's like, okay, you know what, just have your own or whatever. I mean, I don't want that, and I'm a big stickler for a global, but when does a global become like not feasible when you're in a global company? And I don't know, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. HR is like the most problematic area, like by far.
Terrible. Right.
Short maximum retention periods in Western Europe, and maybe even North America, and then you have like these insanely long retention periods in like former Soviet and communist countries.
Yeah.
So Poland is trying to crawl its way back, right? Going from 50 to 10, they're trying.
Poland's been at that forever, though.
Yeah, and it's just, so that's difficult, definitely.
Yeah, there is that question. And then along with that, it's kind of like, well, when does your retention schedule start looking like a file plan instead of a retention schedule? So, I mean, we pushed back, our German folks kind of wanted a piecemeal by piecemeal, like document retention for so many things so many items in the HR category. We pushed back, and actually, I don't want to use words like win lose, but we did win. And it was just getting ridiculous because it was And then I have one more question, just to these are all things that are kind of we're dealing with right now. So we were dealing with the issue of background checks, like still again another very kind of contentious little document there. And in your opinion, in your experience, have you kept it as part of the personnel, for successful candidates? I'm talking for hired candidates. Have you kept it as part of the personnel record, or do you recommend keeping it separately?
Separate. Yeah.
Or like along with other type of screenings, because often like drug and alcohol, you have a separate category for that. So I was kind of toying with the idea of making like a whole screening record class, obviously under HR, and putting drug, alcohol, and background check, or is it like, and then so anyway, I know I've asked a lot of questions, but
no worries. So to touch upon that last point, so what we do is we help multinationals simplify their retention schedules, right? So you have those, we have 500 record types. Okay, can you bring it back to 200? Yes, we do that. But we do look at the laws. We do look at like, what do the laws say? What's the intent there? The intent of legislatures has never been that you keep background checks for the entire duration of an employment. It's just not the case. I know that it's fashionable to kind of say, oh, it's all like one big data lake, it's Workday, it's it's all there, but that's not the point. It's really a screening before entry. Of course, you can have some bad experiences in the first few months, so you might want to go back there and say like what happened, but you also want to do some quality checks, I guess. So you need it for a little bit of time. But to now then say, okay, for a duration of 30 years, it's a nice thing to look back on, when someone is celebrating their 30-year anniversary with us or something. No, I mean, it serves no purpose.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting, because we did decide to keep it with the personnel record, which obviously
Yeah.
has that longer retention, but
it's,
I don't know. We were having push
yeah.
and we're having push and pull kind of. It really is a push and pull. Like you feel like you're just in a tug of war between the privacy folks and the HR folks. And one of the HR reasons for keeping it was because if someone gets promoted, then they get promoted at a certain level, then they need to do a background check anyway, no matter how long the person's been with the company. So if they have that background check, then they're kind of saving dollars because they don't have to do the background check again. There's there's all these weird and wonderful reasons that we've had. And in the end, that is what we decided to do, just keep the status quo. But it was, I don't know if there's any wrong, right? Although I do like your reasoning of intent. But
I mean, the answer will lie in the laws. It's very simple. So
honestly, there really weren't any laws. That was the other strange thing. There's nothing specifically related to background checks, honestly. Well, not that we found anyway.
Well, okay, I'm here to challenge that. So
I would be really, because we have a large account with one of your large competitors, and they tell us that there's nothing really specific about background check. Well, in the citation library that I checked, their citation library, obviously.
So one of the questions I've seen, sorry, I interrupted. And I looked at the Yale University retention schedule a while ago, is that they took the statute of limitations for employment law claims and applied it to a number of different kinds of records, including background check materials. And they combined that with the general retention for employment law, and then made it, I think, 7 years or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what you see a lot. And then there will be a few countries, just a few, not too many, that actually will have a minimum retention or even maximum retention period.
So you mean max statute of limitation for whatever country you're dealing with, be it
right. So
US,
in this case, it was the statute of limitations for employment claims in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to say farewell to everybody. Seth's going to take over from here. Thank you again, Juana and Phyllis, and thank you to everybody for joining us. I will see you at whoever hits the next event.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jackie.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There are, I know there are some rules in Northern Ireland. I know that there are some rules in the UK. So definitely, yeah, it's you should never say never. That's what I learned.
No, I didn't say never. No, I didn't say never. I said we didn't find any, nor were we shown any by our vendor. But
I understand, and I think Filers Keepers is the only one that actually claims that they have read all the laws in the country. So that's a difference.
Honestly, we pay enough money to this vendor, so you would hope that they've read all the laws inside out and back to front as well. But whatever.
I'm gonna refrain from comment here. I just will tell you we're trying to be 100 times cheaper than our competitors.
Right.
I had a question about one of the slides that just popped up. It said record keeping Italian style. Is record keeping in Italy somewhat more chaotic than the rest of the EU, or is it?
So Italian style, this slide, I don't know if I can share it. I don't know if it's allowing me to. Oh, it is. Huh, how about that? you see this? I'm not going to make it full screen because it will mess it up a bit. But this one was just what I found interesting is like if you're over 50 years old, you know, it's I think it's eyesight measurements, it's 2 years, and if you're under 50 years old, it's 5 years, you know, like this kind of so that was one thing. Italy is an interesting country when it comes to you know, Europe. You know, they don't really particularly like retention, and then the things that they do regulate, they're very specific. So that's the Italian style, I guess. Yeah. And yeah, and we're facing real troubles, of course. You know, and I don't want to keep you up to keep you too long, of course, but we're facing troubles with countries that do not publish their laws online, governments that claim copyright to their laws. There are some real, you know, banana republics where with a dictatorship that actually can change their opinion or their
They change things overnight.
Yeah, they do, and then they, you know, half of all the Saudi Arabian laws went offline 3 weeks ago.
Offline?
Offline. In Indonesia, the laws are only online half of the time, you know. So those are real issues. And we're also looking into kind of see if we can send teams to those countries to kind of start scanning the laws and you know, publishing them, because we do feel that it serves a bigger purpose here, because you know, human rights start with knowing the law.
Yes.
If you don't know the law, then you know, as a citizen, you are yeah.
Do they publish anything in official registers or?
Yeah, because every country does have like a gazette where they publish their laws. They need to, but those are not readily available. So sometimes we literally have to call the law library of the British Virgin Islands or so to actually say, hey, can we get some scans? Yeah. I
see.
Yeah. So that's it. We're getting there. Yeah.
Don't see any other questions.
Yeah.
All right. Yvonne, thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. And again, to everybody still on, we recorded it. So if you wanted to play something back, or for folks who registered and couldn't make it, we'll have the link with the recording out to everyone. And again, we have our 65th chapter anniversary coming up next month. I believe it's the 13th at the Rutgers Club. It's just a great space. We have a bar and food and great networking event. And there will be outdoor seating area for folks if you're not comfortable with the indoors. We'll have a nice outdoor space as well. So we hope you can join us for that. Details are on our webpage, and additional details will be emailed out soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we will see you at the next event.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.